Alrighty, welcome ladies and gentlemen to the fourth episode of the Athletes Podcast. Introducing today my good friend Mike Froome, a former NCAA Division I golfer and a current founder of ThatMadeMeSmile.com, happiness company, and a pretty cool inspirational idea that you've got going here, and I'm pretty excited to have you on. So give the Athletes Podcast listeners a little introduction to yourself.
Thanks, Dave. Well, thanks for having me on. This is exciting, and I'm so proud of you and excited to see what you're going to do with this. This is something that I think every athlete and student athlete should see as to where you can take it and what you can do, and that a basis in education is fun, but whenever you can do something outside of it with this much meaning, it really gives you purpose. So thank you for what you're doing. Quick thing back to the golf. It was fun. Getting to play college golf is always exciting, and then playing a few years professionally after that was a nice follow-up. And then throughout all that is the reason that Made Me Smile is now something that I'm creating. So I call it a happiness company.
Okay.
But really what it's based on is engaging and connecting through one smile a day. And that's a hashtag we're going with, is hashtag one smile a day. For us to be able to share that and to engage with everyone around us and really encourage everyone to do what they want to do, but also to share a smile and be a little happier day by day.
Very cool. I like it, and it's important nowadays with the almost the amount of negativity that comes around, society in general nowadays. People don't smile enough, and people aren't as happy as I think they should be on a day-to-day basis, knowing that they're alive and they've won the lottery in that sense, right? So because it's the Athletes Podcast, I want to start with your athletic journey, what got you to NCAA Division I golf. Where were you playing at?
So I played at St. Lawrence University, and then I went to Florida for my final 3 years. What really got me there was, so I grew up playing hockey like most Canadian
boys.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I always wanted to go to St. Lawrence. I fell in love with their hockey team and their program. And then in grade 11, I started paying a little more attention to golf and where it could take me. And I knew that in either sport, I wasn't going to make the PGA Tour. I knew that I wasn't going to make the NHL.
Okay.
So I wanted to figure out what would be the best way to be able to go somewhere that A, I'd always wanted to go to,
Mm-hmm.
and B, be able to get the most experience out of what I was trying to do.
And sorry, what age was that you decided you weren't going to the NHL or the PGA Tour?
Yeah, so at 16, I was the captain of the junior hockey team, so like doing well, but I knew I was going to hit my limit. I knew that I just wasn't going to get to that level in hockey for sure. And in golf, I knew that I was okay and could go and play, but never at the exceptional level that you have to be at the top. Because the guys in the NHL, the guys in the MLB, the guys on the PGA Tour, they're so good.
It's ridiculous.
That you just have to respect that.
Yeah.
And that ended up being the reason with when I ended up playing, like finished golf, I did want that, as everyone does, a desire to go, but knowing that I wasn't ever going to get there helped give me a little bit of solace when I was finishing. And then there's so much more respect for the game and for these athletes for what they do, because it's not just a show up and play, it's a lifelong commitment where someone isn't just going to show up and, some of the guys are great, like Brooks Koepka, for instance, who can just show up and just flat out play. He's a beast. But everyone works so hard their entire life to get to where they get to. So these massive contracts they sign, all of this, that's the culmination of their life. Mm-hmm. And Tim Ferriss had a great quote on his podcast. I think it was Kurt Vonnegut that said it. But it's to be top in the world, you either have to be top 1% at one thing or top 10% into seemingly unrelated areas. Mm-hmm. So for the guys that make it, or the girls that make it to the top level in their sport, they're the top 1%.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that someone can't go be the top agent, or doesn't mean that they can't be involved in the game in some other way.
Agreed.
It's whenever you can have that background in sports, which all of us do, and it's amazing, and sports can teach you so much about life in general. But if you can use sports and the lessons you learned from that and tie that into something else that you can bring into it, man, there's no limit to what you can do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that statement, and that's kind of where this stemmed from. The Athletes Podcast. I want to create a library where basically any athlete, whether it's a 5-year-old kid who's just putting on skates for the first time, or someone who's 25, who maybe still thinks they have a shot, or the 45-year-old who's playing beer league hockey, right? Sports have this incredible ability to teach us things like you mentioned before, and it's it's something where I feel as though most athletes have the ability to learn, or that time to learn, right? And it's not necessarily taking it and having, there's no one formula that makes someone fantastic and amazing. I feel like it's a culmination of, the people that you surround yourself with growing up, and listening and learning from other people who have gone through it. So I think that's, part of the reason why this has started, right? And we're four episodes in now.
I love it, and keep going, and don't stop, because I think it's engaging in conversations like this with numerous athletes from different areas. I mean, a few of your early guests have had some great insights into what they're doing, and they're younger than I am. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm a grizzled veteran. I'm 30 in 2 months. It's crazy to look back on how much can change over a decade. So from the time I was 20 until now, so many things have gone way different than what I would have ever expected to be at this point in my life. And I'm sure the younger ones that are coming up, there's so much promise in them, and so much just excitement for what they're going to do, and I encourage them to go do it.
Yeah.
But in the same sense, understand that at some point you have to come to terms with yourself, and accept that, you know what, this might be my life, and that's okay if it is. But if it's not, who cares?
Yeah.
Be your judge. When you learn to ignore the rest, it gets so much easier, because then you have clarity, and then you can do it. Because to be able to do something like this, when I know the people you leading up to this, people are like, oh, there are so many podcasts out there right now. Why do you want to do this? Because we're so early on still. Yeah. And that life is so cool in the way that it evolves. And looking back in the early days of our ancestors, where everyone was a farmer and you would trade services instead of money, we're getting back to that in a way where now we're going to exchange our experiences and our gifts. Mm-hmm. Because we all can't go be a lawyer or a doctor. Those people are freaks as well for their ability to do what they do. That's not easy. That's like being a pro athlete in so many different arenas. Mm-hmm. But it's like we need to kind of change the narrative away from having to fit into these certain areas and start looking at our own little niche spots. I know that's a buzzword, and I want to stay away from that as much as possible, but it's also super important, because you're going to have an audience, and it doesn't matter if it's 10 people or if it's 10,000 people. You're going to connect with someone in there, and because of that, you're providing what you're good at. So I think that's so important for anyone in their 20s. Go ahead and just try it. Just try it and see what happens.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and it's cool to hear that from someone, on the outside who may not necessarily be directly affiliated or wasn't involved sort of in the early talks when I was speaking about it. But what you've done with That Made Me Smile, and with some of the things that I've heard about you, and through talking with other acquaintances, your positive outlook on life, and your ability to tie in or have a positive spin on something that may not have elsewise been interpreted negatively. I think that's an extremely important characteristic that people should be cherish in you, and work towards having more of. So I really enjoy having those conversations with you and having that positive outlook, because I get that smile when I'm done with that conversation.
Sweet.
And I think that what you were talking about, of having those 20-year-olds doing anything that they possibly can, it's just raw. Mm-hmm. It's raw energy, and it's whether those people have an interest in it, and if they're passionate for it, they got to go for it, right? Everyone's got, or I shouldn't say everyone, there are plenty of people who have that 9 to 5 that they hate going to, but they have to do it because that's what pays the bills. But there's 24 hours in a day, and you got to take advantage of those other hours where you're maybe not clocked in, but you have the ability to still, create something that's your own. So
agreed.
Yeah.
And I think that we should also focus. So you see so much online right now where everyone wants to be like this solopreneur and be an entrepreneur and do their own thing, and everyone should. But don't discount the comfort that you have from having a steady job. When you can have a job that allows you to pay the bills, that allows you to be more creative. When you don't have to really put the gas down and make money from your idea today, you can be genuine and real. And so having that thing in the background that still allows you to pay the bills and does not put stress on you, it allows you to be so much more creative than someone who's like, I need to monetize today. I need to do this today. Take your time and don't rush. Like I've run a few marathons, and they're the moments that really change over into life and allow you to see it, because when you're approaching the starting line, everything's good, everyone's happy. Consider that to the first day of school, the first day of a new job. There's all this excitement, everyone's ready. And once you get to the finish line, you have this energy inside you that you're like, oh my God, I can't wait, or the starting line, sorry. You have so much energy, you're ready to go, you want to go do it. when you get to the 10 kilometer mark, the 20, 28, the 32 kilometer mark is when you really figure out who you are. And that's when you want to give up. And, you feel like you're going to throw up. You want to pass out. Your legs hurt. They're screaming. You have nothing left in you to give. And that's where so many of us live our lives, is right before that moment. Because once you get past kilometer 32, you have less than 10 kilometers to go. And you've already done 32 before, so you can get to the finish line. But it's when you quit at the 32 kilometer mark, that's where dreams go to die.
Yeah.
Get to that 32 kilometer mark, take the punch in the face, and continue on and go finish. And then keep going. Because once you cross that finish line and you get to see the people that are waiting for you, or you get to eat that banana you've wanted, or the 3 bags of salt and vinegar chips like I ate in Vancouver the moment I was done,
nice.
You feel great. Then go have a beer, reflect, and sign up for the next one. Same with any idea. Go, have that beer, reflect, come up with another one. Because the first idea may not work that you have. The 5th, 6th, 10th, 15th may not work. But one of those will hit, and you'll feel amazing.
Yeah, couldn't have said it any better myself. And so I've got so many questions from that. The first, okay, we'll talk about marathons.
Mm-hmm.
You finished hockey, finished golf. Did you transition that athletic ability and potential over to marathons? What spurred that?
So I was always a runner, and I use that term very lightly. I would never consider myself anywhere near good enough to be called a runner.
Okay.
One of my good buddies I grew up with, Matt Leader, went to Florida State and was one of the top runners at the university. He was a runner. I dabbled in it and enjoyed it for, it was kind of like my meditation in a way. We can get into meditation later, but we'll say that like running was my form of meditation and relaxation.
Yeah.
And then in 2017, I had heard of Rich Roll, read his book Finding Ultra, and he had had a decade. He was an attorney, was no longer happy, was addicted to drugs, and was an alcoholic. And he knew that he was walking up a flight of stairs and felt a pain in his chest, and he had to make a change. He then became one of the 25 most fit men in the world, and did, I think what he called was the Kona 5, but he did 5 Ironmans back to back on all the big islands in Hawaii.
Whew.
5 days in a row. It ended up being 6 because of technical difficulties, but to pull that off and do that, I was like, wow, I'm ready to roll.
Yeah.
So finished that book, and then was like, all right, I'm gonna do a marathon. And I love BC, and you're from there, so I mean, you can attest to why it's so gorgeous and
the best place in the world
for sure.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it somewhere that I want to go to, because I think like experiential travel is the way that we should travel. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna go for the marathon. Spent a few days in Tofino touring around, just connecting with nature, and then it was time to run. And it was having that goal and knowing that with training and commitment that a marathon could really provide a different launching pad for life and provide such insight for me and to test myself.
Interesting. So you use that marathon in Vancouver basically as a snapshot, couple hour version of the way you're interpreting life. And that 32 kilometer, where were you at? What was going through your mind?
So whoever maps out the Vancouver Marathon, I dislike them very much because of the Burrard Street Bridge. So at that point in the marathon, there's the Burrard Street Bridge. For any of you that aren't aware, it's seemingly a 90-degree incline, but I think it's more like probably 25 or 30. And it's so difficult that time because you're so beat down already. You're like, oh my god, how am I going to finish this? You have this climb up, and you're looking forward to Stanley Park, this 7-kilometer gorgeous stretch, before you head up to the 1-kilometer sprint to the finish. But coming up Burrard Street Bridge was so difficult, and I wanted to quit. At 28 kilometers in that race, I didn't nourish myself enough. It was my first one, so I was bullish. I didn't know the right pacing. I came out too quick, and I did not drink enough Noon energy drinks, which are
electrolyte
required of them, and Cliff Bars. So I did not ingest enough while I was running, and definitely did not take in enough water, so I was cramping up hard. One of the volunteers, they were like, man, you need to eat something. So I stopped running for like 2 minutes and like had a Cliff Bar, got some Noon electrolytes back up, and got a little bit of life back in me. But then that bridge near was I wanted to quit. I really, really wanted to quit. And the cool thing was there was a man that was running the race, and I'm going to guess he's around 70.
Okay.
And out of nowhere, he comes up behind me and he was like, "Buddy, you got this. Just keep going. You got this." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Well, I guess this is why I love running. Like, what random guy would just run up and be running for that long?" And obviously an older gentleman, and just like so willing to push and go. And he just kept going. He did not stop. He didn't break a stride. It was so cool. And he's like, "Keep going, buddy. I'll see you at the finish line." I was like, "Okay." So I was like, "All right. If he can do it, I can do it." Yeah. So buckled through
it. Half his age. I would hope so.
Yeah, right? Not even at that point. Jeez, they don't age me that much. And so got over the bridge. And then entering Stanley Park, like my shoes were white and they were now red. I had lost 4 toenails because I also didn't adjust for the possibility of my feet swelling. So I was trying to finish this race, hurting like crazy. Long story short, I get to the finish line. And who's there to give me my medal? That 7-year-old guy said, "I would see you at the finish line."
No way.
And I was like, "My man, like, why are you here?" He goes, "I told you I'd be here, and you owe me a beer." I was like, "Okay, let's go." But it was in that moment I was like, this is so cool. And to just know that there's people that are going to be waiting for you, and they're going to help you along the way. But you don't need someone to hold your hand to finish a marathon. You don't need someone to hold your hand to finish a project or life. It's just go do it. And people will be there when you need it. But push yourself. If I would have quit, I would have been so upset.
Yeah.
So just finishing that was really cool.
That's an incredible story. And okay, toes, how are they? Toenails, do they regrow?
Yeah, so it takes 6 months for a toenail to grow back. I'm in the process of losing one other one right now, just from running, and you know, a lot of experienced runners are going to say they've lost a ton of them, and it does happen. Gotcha. And it's funny. Funny story is that my girlfriend that I'm now dating, whenever we first started, I didn't have a toenail again, and I had my feet in the sand at the beach one day, and she did it, and I was like, "Why are you putting your feet in the sand?" She's like, "Oh, I think that looks cool." I was like, "I don't have a toenail. I'm doing this because I'm embarrassed." So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Shout out to Christina. So you actually, I want to get back to your time NCAA school. You feel very passionately about school and sort of where that's sitting. What also happened today was California's Fair Play Act was signed. I don't know if you're aware. Allowing NCAA athletes in California to now make money on their personal brand, name, number, etc. So touch a bit about sport, your time there, but also how that you feel as though affects athletes, given that you were an athlete. Golf, a little different, but...
it's a very hot topic issue.
Yeah.
And weighing in on this, I've thought a lot about it.
Yeah.
And to hear the comments that Tim Tebow made, and they were very divisive in how people responded to his opinion. Mm-hmm. And now everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and no one is necessarily wrong, and I think that there are arguments to be made in both ways. When you go to an NCAA school, you are gifted at the biggest ones with a great scholarship, and I do not agree with our current education system. I think there is so much more to be desired. However, in saying that, I think that knowledge is needed, and it is never wasted by going to learn. And when you can do it for free, that's terrific. Mm-hmm. And that is a big bonus to these kids. But in saying that, and here is where it might get a little controversial.
For sure.
Some of these kids are never going to go on to play professional sports. The amount of NCAA students that leave school and go to play professional sports is so small.
Nominal.
And that's their moment. So why shouldn't they be allowed to make money off of their likeness? Yeah. It's, yes, the schools are there, and you know they put up a lot for these kids, and they allow them to come in and give them their education and house them and feed them and take them across the country to the nicest venues in the world. But if these kids are marketable enough, I think they should be able to tap into it then.
For sure.
Now, because NCAA kids are student athletes, not athlete students, I think that the educational aspect needs to be respected a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And if they want to make it essentially a semi-pro type thing where you're getting paid and then still doing school, like there needs to be some movement on that.
Yeah.
But I am 100% in favor of athletes being able to make money off their likeness. Even on social media. I mean, NCAA regulations are so stringent that it's so difficult to even know what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
Like, and if you make one mistake, you lose your scholarship, you lose all of it. So let's just try to make it real simple. It's like when the rules of golf changed to make them more simpler. Debatable, but it was to grow the game
Yeah.
and let the athletes play. And I mean, if they perform at that level, that's fine, because maybe they have 2, 3, 4. Some of them, you don't even get to stay your full 4 years on the team.
Yeah.
But if you do, you should be able to make the money, because once you're done, but that's all you've done to get there. If you've been a golfer, if you've been a football player, a basketball player, maybe at that time you're done your playing career. You should be able to capitalize on what you've been able to do. And with college football, especially being so popular in the U.S., these kids deserve it.
Yeah, and I think it's ultimately rewarding those kids and those athletes for their hard work, right? You've got, a guy like LeBron James who didn't even bother going to college. Probably one of the reasons was because he wasn't going to make any money. Granted, he was an exceptional athlete, but he was able to completely skip over those 4 years of school and start making money immediately. Some guys don't have as that opportunity to take it like that, but I 100% agree with what California's done. The governor, Gavin Newsom, coming in, signing that agreement. So hopefully other states are going to follow suit. But it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks, months, where this leads to, and how much athletes actually end up getting reimbursed. But I want to touch more on your thoughts on the educational portion, because so many students now go down to the NCAA and they're just bombarded with athletic requirements. This is what you got to do. Basically school comes second at the end of the day. And your emphasis was on the education portion, but I don't know whether you necessarily think that school, the way it currently sits, is the way it should be formatted. You want to elaborate on that a bit? Yeah.
So I agree with learning, and I never let my desire to learn get in the way of my education. Now, how am I going to say that differently? I might have said that wrong, but we'll move on from that. Mm-hmm. Education is currently, as the way it is your ability to memorize and then regurgitate information without retaining. When you learn something, you can explain it. Mm-hmm. I don't like when I see kids excited for snow days or for days off from school. You should want to go there. You should want to be going and engaging in that material and learning. You should want to jump into conversations.
Yeah.
I learned more from friends and being outside of the classroom than I ever did in it. And why? I often get bored in class. And I wasn't this massive 99% student, but I was good enough. And I always enjoyed engaging in conversations outside of the classroom or with teachers at a later date. Mm-hmm. Or Dr. Tom Fisher, who teaches at UCF, amazingly smart man. Always started his classes with, is there anything you want to talk about before I talk about what I need to talk about? Oh. And oftentimes, we wouldn't even get to class material at any time. It would be, let's talk about this. And the man had experienced so much. He was in the Navy and was a pilot and had experienced so many things in life. And it was through those conversations that we were able to connect. So moving off of that, looking at things like Lambda School now, mm-hmm. Or Mission U that Adam Braun has started. These are schools that are putting an emphasis on students learning first. So there's no cost, there's no tuition. You only pay it back after you've landed this job. Mm-hmm. And it's a 9-month super intensive period. So for my kids, which one day I do hope to have, and it will be a debate with my wife at that time, I am a big proponent of a mixture of homeschool and traditional schooling if traditional schooling changes. Why is that? Because I think that the system currently is set up to cater to less than average. I think that we can only move at the pace of C- and D students. And to their defense, those kids shouldn't even be taking the classes they're taking.
Yeah.
Because they have different talents. So we really need to look at the system that we have and make it more one-on-one. Let's focus on someone that's really good at what they're doing and give them every opportunity to be that 1% in the world. Because you can't pass calculus does not mean that you aren't good at math. It means you don't get calculus.
Yeah.
There are plenty of other things that you could look at and be able to do and find comfort in it. It's in David Epstein's new book called Range. He talks about I think it's neat and wicked environments. Okay. And golf and chess, they're neat. The world's wicked. It's unpredictable. You never know what's going to come at you. It isn't just this set terms of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Everything changes. We see a lot of kids that go from elementary school to high school to university. They get their first job. Then they get a wife or a girlfriend, a wife, have their kids, and they're done. And at 26, you're supposed to have that all figured out. So where the hell are you going to go for the next 50 years at minimum of your life
Yeah.
when there's nothing else that's planned out for you. Everyone freaks out. Why is there a loneliness epidemic? Why is depression and anxiety so high? We don't have any guidance right now. There's no guidance in what to do when you're in your mid-20s and you're done with school. No one gives a shit. You're done. So how do we figure this out? And if you don't get into a great job, or you don't find your wife, or if you aren't married by 25, what are you doing? Well, some of you take till 30, some take till 40, some take till 70.
Yeah.
But it's about learning throughout life and engaging in all the material that is out there with all the knowledge that's available online and through books and through podcasts. And all these areas, there's no excuse not to learn, but a big argument against education.
So your hesitation right now is surrounding the current education system that's formatted, to cater to your quote-unquote average student, which is, debatable as to whether or not those are even average students as it is. But this new form of learning, whether it's through podcast, whether it's through, watching YouTube videos. Some of the smartest people I know have sat and watched YouTube videos for hours on end about basically every topic known to man. And they're an encyclopedia now of information simply from watching, because that's how they retain information. Whereas, in the current society setup, in grade 5 you have to read X book, and in grade 6 you have to read this book, and grade 7 follows suit, right? And like you said, it's that, go to school, go to post-secondary, find a girlfriend, get a job. It's laid out, like you mentioned, and society needs to recognize that people are living longer as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, it used to be that if you didn't have kids or whatever by 30, what are you doing with your life? Whereas now, people are living into their 80s, 90s, hitting that century mark, and people are still working as well. They're working later. They don't necessarily want to work those jobs that give them a pension. You can also work and save on your own accord, depending on the lifestyle you want to live later in life. So there's so many different areas that are under question right now, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to do what they want to do. And I think that's what you've done or are working towards doing. Maybe not right now at your current state, but I think you've got a good plan in place. And I've noticed here that you are very well read. Is there specific people that you follow that you use as motivation?
Yeah, so in 2016 is when I really started diving into a lot of books, and I almost have an addiction to buying books on Amazon because I feel like there's just so much knowledge out there.
Mm-hmm.
I read, as so many people have, Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, and I didn't have anything at the time that I was like, I'm going to jump in it and be able to do this, but it gave me a different scope as to how life could be lived, and to move away from the 9 to 5, which I just never really understood, into something that I could do whenever I wanted to and work as hard as I want. So reading, we'll start with Dan Pink. He has To Sell is Human and Drive, 2 amazing books. To Sell is Human basically touches that everyone is in sales no matter what you're doing because you're connecting.
Yep.
Drive is about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, so super crucial. Moving into Adam Grant's work, who is my favorite thinker. He's an organizational psychologist, works at Wharton. Originals is a book that was phenomenal in the sense of accepting that it's okay to be who you are. Mm-hmm. His first book, Give and Take, about being a giver and a taker, an amazing read. Dive into that. For anything on marketing, I would go to Jonah Berger, who is also at Wharton, who has written Contagious and Invisible Influence.
Thanks to you, I was able to read Contagious. Fantastic book.
It lays it all out. It's amazing. It's a crash course in marketing.
Yeah.
You could then look at The Power of Moments, which is a book that I quote very often in any talks that I give. And a quick overview of that is Chip and Dan Heath are the authors of that. And they talk about creating epic moments, which is elevate, pride, insight, and connection. If you can include those 4 things in any moment, you can create such a memorable and perfect experience that people are going to come back to you every time. So that's a must read. Numerous other books, but those would be the ones that really had a profound impact. And then recently, Chip Wilson's Little Black Stretchy Pants, The Stories of Lululemon, was a very cool read and a good insight as to how he grew that company to what it is today.
So it seems like these individuals who have created something out of nothing for instance, are working these jobs that require that background knowledge, not necessarily surface level, have really motivated you. And what, you talk about Lululemon, that, the founder of that, is this sort of what you're trying to create with That Made Me Smile, or what's your end goal with that?
So a very meta look at it would be, but I definitely don't want to get into the clothing. It's more of the mindset that's offered through Lulu and what they do with their staff and the direction that they want to take the brand.
Okay.
The coolest thing about that is that everyone that works at Lulu is encouraged to become their best self. Never held back from going on to becoming something better. They take time to invest in their, who they're called educators, so that's their salespeople, their floor people, and they really want them to succeed. So learning from that, and then coming into That Made Me Smile, the grand vision for That Made Me Smile is to create the world's largest global happiness brand. How are we going to do that? Well, I think experience-ships. So instead of offering scholarships, I want to offer experience-ships, which are essentially mission trips, but in a different way.
Okay.
To be able to go and participate and get involved with different organizations and spread happiness through smiles.
And that incorporates your traveling aspect.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Which is, and traveling for everyone, that all the kids that always say, "We want to go travel." Everyone's looking for something and looking for meaning. So my opinion is the reason everyone wants to travel is because they're looking for something a little bit more, and it gives you perspective. When you come home after traveling, you're a different person and you change because the people and the things you've seen along the way. Getting outside of your comfort zone changes you instantly. It's amazing. Going off of that, I feel like we're all caught up in this digital world right now, and
100%.
And you know what, it may be going this way, maybe this is going to be the norm, but I don't think that our biology has caught up to it yet. So I think that it's imperative that we still connect in real time. So we're working on developing an app with That Made Me Smile called Picnic. And what Picnic does is it connects you in real life from your online interactions. So let's say that you're a podcast specialist and you're like an expert in podcasting, and I'm a pro golfer, and you want to learn about golf, and I want to learn about podcasting. We swipe on Picnic and we match from the fact that I can teach you golf and you can teach me podcasting, and we go on a picnic. What's a picnic? A picnic is anything that you want it to be as long as it exists in real life. Maybe that's a run, maybe that's a lunch, maybe that's whatever you want to do, but it takes you from this virtual world into a real life current situation to learn from each other. And that's how education needs to change, and that's how the one-on-one aspect can come in. So moving it off from where we are today, where like Udemy and Coursera, all those amazing things online, what if we bring that into real life? And what if we use the platforms that are already there and just push them a little further?
So it's a Tinder date for your knowledge.
Yeah.
Basically, in summary.
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess you call that, which is a very cool way to put it. But yeah, again, essentially, a Tinder date for your mind.
Yeah.
And where it is 100% platonic, and you're just trying to focus on improving yourself and engaging with someone around you.
Okay. And are all these thoughts stemming from yourself? Do you have a work partner that you have come up with these ideas with? And where are you at in this process? Is this something that we're seeing tomorrow? Is this 5 years, 10 years? What's the status?
That Made Me Smile. The book will be out in 5 to 6 months. The blog's live now. Live speaking events are going on. With that, we're creating live events for people to come out, and I will be speaking and having people engaging and really participating in engagement activities. Outside of that, we will be rolling out Picnic in the next year or two.
Okay.
Still working on a technical team behind that, but the vision is there. And that came about just from traveling around golfing and connecting with different people and learning, and being able to meet people in a one-on-one setting or in a team setting and getting to exchange information. It was fun a lot of the time sitting around the bonfires, you get this, or when you're out on a golf course and you're with people like Gary Laveau from Rascal Flats, got to play with him in Orlando, and that was amazing to have for 4.5 hours to be engaging with someone like that.
Yeah.
And just I really think like if we can all engage a little bit more and smile a little bit more, it'll all change the narrative of life today.
Yeah, and it comes back to how sports somehow every time give you that opportunity to learn a little bit more, whether it's pushing yourself past that 32 kilometer mark or having a 4-hour interactive conversation with a country singer, right? But it's those learning opportunities that come from it, and I think are so special. So are there specific stories that stick out to you that you've gone through that have really made a profound impact on your life to date? And where are you at in your marathon in life?
It's a great question. My marathon of life. Wow, it's posed perfectly. I don't even think I'm at the starting line yet, to be honest. I think that I'm still walking up, and I some days I feel like I forgot my shoes at home, And I think that life is so long that there's so much that you can accomplish and so much you can do just by listening to yourself. A few of the moments in my life where there's been a ton of clarity is, well, recently I was in Edmonton for a conference, and there's a homeless man on the street, and everyone was passing him by, and he was asking for a quarter. And I had a long day and was just simply trying to go to dinner, but I was really trying to be more engaged and engage with the environment around me. And I saw this guy, and I was like, you know what, how can I, quote unquote, break the script with this guy, and how can I create an epic moment for him? And so I walked up to him, and I was like, my man, what's going on? And he was like, can I have a quarter? I was like, your life's worth more than a quarter. Why don't you come in and have dinner with me? And I don't know why I necessarily did that, because it was a little dangerous looking back. But the guy's name is Jimmy. He accepted my offer to come into the Cactus Club in Edmonton. And I was still in a suit, and there were people staring at us in the restaurant. This guy trying to wheel his cart of belongings in just to come have a meal. With stares come stories, and I hope that everyone that was in Cactus Club that night can tell this story in their own way. But interacting with Jimmy and knowing that learned that it was his first meal in 3 days, and hearing the stories of how he got to where he was, really put things in perspective. And I asked, Jimmy, why aren't you in a shelter, man? Like, there's things out there. He said he didn't need it, because he had everything that he could possibly ever need in his home, which was between two dumpsters behind a 7-Eleven.
Wow.
And that just really gives you a different outlook on how cool life can be. We're inundated with all these different things to buy materialistic junk that we don't necessarily need. If you have yourself, man, and some love, you're good to go. Another conversation was with Dr. Fisher again, who is a very insightful man. It was about character, and the one word gets a little blue, but just go with it because it's worth it. Dr. Fisher started the class one day. Everyone was talking about golf and becoming a golfer, or becoming a nurse, or becoming whatever they wanted to be. And Dr. Fisher quieted everyone down, looked around the room, and said, you know what? I've played golf 4 days a week for the last 30 years, and no one's ever once called me a golfer. If I was to suck one dick, I'd be a cocksucker for life.
Yeah.
And why is that negative? It shouldn't be. But you know what? If someone thinks your character is wrong in that moment, they're going to judge you on that. So all the good things that you do, people discount them so quickly in today's society. So stay the course on what you're trying to do, and really appreciate everyone else that's around you. And no matter what they're trying to do, maybe it's your first day, someone's first day being a podcaster. Let them call themselves a podcaster. Let them feel comfortable in doing what they're doing, because everyone deserves to have that feeling of knowing that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I was reading a quote earlier today, and it's said it takes 10, 20, 30 years to build a reputation, but 5 seconds to break it, right? And it's sad, the fact that one decision in your life can ultimately affect you for the rest. But that's what you and I and many others are doing now, is working towards trying to create the best possible solution or best possible outcome for our life, right? And as long as it sometimes may seem for others, there's guys like Gary Vaynerchuk, there's inspirational people out there that are providing that motivation that is originally coming from social media, which is a problem on its own that we could probably dive into for 12 hours a day for the next year. But social media has allowed for people like Gary, who have that positive outlook on life, to be able to motivate individuals both extrinsically and intrinsically, right? And I know you've listened to Gary a bit, but I personally love his work and the way he's able to provide that motivation.
Gary's real, and I know that so many people see his material now and who he is. When I started listening to Gary in 2015, he was on the Art of Charm podcast talking to Jordan Harbinger, and I honestly did not like him in like the first 15 minutes of the conversation. I thought he was this brash New Yorker who really didn't care. Wasn't the guy that I would choose to follow or listen to. But as the podcast went on, and luckily or unluckily, I was running on Niagara Parkway and I couldn't change it because I didn't have any service, so I was stuck listening to this guy. At the end of the conversation, at the end of that hour, I was like, this guy is going to change the world.
Yeah.
And he has. In the last 4 years, he's done so many wonderful things, given back, created so many amazing things for so many people, starting his company VaynerX and having like VaynerMedia and Vayner Sports and all that, building his dad's wine company. The stuff that Gary talks about is so believable because it's real and he's done it. And he talks about it in a way that should be talked about. It's none of this coddling and babying and being like, oh, like focus on these 2 words and say these words and feel good. Just do it. And maybe that works for some people, and we won't discount that. But Gary just says, go up and do it. Yeah. And you know what? Momentum starts once you get moving. And as long as you're trying to build and working and going, give her. And he's a freak, working 16, 18 hours a day. That's not for everyone. But if you can go in 2 or 3 hours of good work for yourself to have your creative outlet, I mean, that's key. So taking pieces of what he's done, phenomenal to use. And he will say it, and he said it in interviews before, social media is not the issue. It's people's infatuation with social media and forgetting to then go interact with their current world.
Yeah.
Be free to interact on there and connect with people because you have such an opportunity on there from both a business and a personal connection standpoint for social media. Use it, fine. Yeah. But also take those lessons and bring it into real life, because with 30 hashtags on an Instagram post, you can connect to someone. But why not look at somebody that you're walking up to and try to think of 30 hashtags you could say to them in real life in conversation? Be like, oh, I love your shirt, I love your smile, I love what you did, you know, how you doing today? Just have a conversation with someone and move it away from existing in a world that's governed by character limits into an area where you can have unlimited conversations.
Yeah, he shared a video today. It was basically, in summary, was saying that laziness is a good thing, which is so counterintuitive to what anyone's been thinking for the past 100 years, whatever it is. And in summary, he says, you know, laziness is our body showing us that we're not interested in something that we're doing. And, you know, it takes you a second to think about that. But, you know, when you're in school, for instance, and you're talking about how, you know, maybe you weren't interested in the subject you were learning about, that doesn't mean you're a dumb kid for not wanting to learn.
For sure.
It means that that's not what you're interested in. That's not what you want to apply your energy to. So laziness, if you go full circle, actually shows you what you don't want to be listening to, what you don't want to be learning about, what you don't want to be doing, and actually on the flip side ends up showing you what you do want to be interested in. Because if you don't become lazy doing a certain thing, it shows you've got a passion for that, and maybe you should consider sticking to it. So it's
amazing.
Yeah, I watched that about 15 minutes before you arrived, and it changed my whole outlook.
That's cool.
But there's so many people on that social media topic that, you know, they can sit there scrolling for hours, when, you know, in reality, all it takes is finding that one thing that motivates you and that you want to go and get after, and Bob's your uncle, go do it. Right? It's the Nike slogan.
So cool.
Is there anything that you want to specifically touch on? I know we've talked briefly about your book. You want to go into more detail about what's coming in that, what people can look forward to, if there's specific chapters dedicated to, you know, meditation. We spoke about that briefly earlier.
Sure. So starting tomorrow, there's going to be daily posts on thatmademesmile.co. That is the company website for the blog. And each day there's going to be a post referencing something that had made me smile. Now, the preface of this book, why did it come to be? It's a quick snapshot of things that have made me smile over the years for every day. So at the end of the day, I would journal quickly and trying to turn a moment into a memory and writing down why this one little thing made me smile. You know, maybe it's a tree, maybe it's a blade of grass, maybe it's someone I talked to, maybe it was a sunset, maybe it was visiting the Grand Canyon. Maybe it was something during that day that made me smile. I would make sure that I reflected on that before I went to bed that night and would go to bed with a smile. Then the next day I would wake up and try to go interact with someone and allow them to feel that smile. So that's where the idea for share one smile a day came to be.
Okay.
So on the blog, there's going to be posts that lay out my first-hand experience, a recap as to why that made me smile, and then kind of like a kick in the ass to go do it for yourself and to go share a smile that day and how you could do it by interacting. Instead of asking the question, which the one question I hate the most that you see a lot in conversations is, what do you do? Why don't we ask more, you know, who are you? Or when's the last time you smiled, or some other kind of question that's going to provoke conversation instead of only valuing ourselves based on what we do. So off that made me smile consists of travel, adventures, animals, family and friends, seasons, and sports are really the 6 areas that I focused on while writing this.
Okay.
And then through on the Instagram account, which is at That Made Me Smile Co., each photo on there is something that I've interacted with and done, and it shares a capture of where that could be in the moment, and the copy under it is an excerpt from a coming blog post.
Okay.
So all of it is tied together to be able to give people as much content as they want in the written form, based on that. Also in the process of creating a very brief podcast, so they're 5 to 7 minute episodes that talk about the similar things, and then flash briefings are available for Amazon and Google Home. So what that is it is like a good morning minute from That Made Me Smile. So we focus on why you should share a smile today and highlight something. So for instance, one is driving down a back road, and I talk for a minute as to why that made me smile, and then encouragement to go live your day and experience something like that.
And are those going to be shared? Is that every morning, 5 a.m. it gets sent to you, or how's that work?
Yeah, so the cool thing with flash briefings, it's super early on in them, so
I've never even heard of it. I'm very intrigued.
I encourage everyone to go ahead, and if you're creating right now, the space is so young. Last time in January, there was only 6,000 in the App Store for that. Now there's 100,000 because people are catching on.
Right.
But what it is whenever you say, like, good morning, Alexa, or Google, give me my flash briefing, it talks about the news or anything that you set for the day, and it plays through from each flash briefing is typically in 1 to 2 minutes. So you're going to hear that come at you, and then when you're getting ready, your flash briefings are playing in the background. So like what has to go on for today, the local news, any like mindfulness or anything that you want to work on, and those things come up. And so huge opportunity in those. So
very cool. That is incredible. And okay, so you touched on mindfulness. Is that something you meditate every day? Is this morning? What's your schedule look like on a daily basis?
So I struggled with meditation at the start, like sitting down and trying to just shut my mind off for 10 minutes. It was a struggle. If I could get 30 seconds at the start, I was super happy with it. Now I do something different, and I'd rather do like a moving meditation. So by doing something physical, and then either in that time be engaged with it, or I will try to sit down. But I think that meditation is so key, but I feel that we all have different ways we can do it, and that similar to the school system, that one form of meditation isn't going to work for everyone. For some it's yoga, for some it's TM. However different kinds of meditation you want to go to, it's fine. But I think as long as you're being mindful, I don't think so much it's more important about meditating. It's being mindful and staying present in that moment and connecting with what's around you. You know, maybe that's putting your feet in the sand at the beach. Maybe that's, for some people that are really extroverted, maybe that's walking into a room that's chaotic, and that's where you feel that. So I think it's meditation. Everyone should meditate, but find the form of meditation that works for you.
Yeah, that's that notion of being mindful. You know, it is in the word mindfulness, but I feel like people aren't necessarily, interpreting that word for what it actually means, and how, that mental health and where people are at internally inside their head is so important nowadays. The last couple decades, there's been a huge emphasis on physical health and making sure that your body's in a good state. But, in the last couple of years, the conversation has started tremendously on, making sure your mind is in a good state as well. And I think that's where Gary's saying that everything's going, as far as making sure that mindfulness is taken care of. And it seems as though you're following suit with that. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, quick one more thing on mindfulness is I think that true mindfulness is whenever you find flow. And I think whenever you're lost in the moment of whatever you're doing, I think that's when we all truly come to life. And I think that it's so crucial to do the work you're doing, because who's to say that while you're sitting here writing or engaging with guests that you aren't completely in the moment? And isn't that what meditation is? It's being able to get lost in the moment. So I think that there are often times we're going to find ourselves during the day that we are in a way meditating without really knowing, and that's how we become recharged.
Yeah,
I think that it's so important to do things each day that make you smile.
Yeah, and I could not agree more. And even if it's, having a conversation with the person sitting across to you at this 2x4 white table, right? And it's it's those little things that somehow or another end up, bringing a smile on your face that ultimately make your day. Because at the end of the night, you go home with a smile on your face. You can go to sleep knowing that you had some positivity in your life. And I think this whole podcast has been, I've had a smile on my face way more than the previous 3, and I think that comes also from your energy. So hopefully with this, that made me smile.co blog, everything else that you're doing, in turn it's going to spread that positive energy that is so important, especially nowadays when it may not be as positive as it should be. So I really appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you on social media also, because it's going to get hot soon?
Yeah, so for the company, it's That Made Me Smile Co. on Instagram right now, and then the website is thatmademesmile.co. We will have, on my personal one, it's at Mike Froome. I will have everything sent out off of that for the podcast launches, when we get the Twitter up, all those fun things, but really just focusing on the website and Instagram right now. Yeah. So That Made Me Smile Co. and thatmademesmile.co.
Perfect. Well, you guys heard it here first. This has been the 4th episode of the Athletes Podcast with Mike Froome. Thank you guys very much for listening, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.